Good morning and assalamu alaikum everyone. Hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to our webinar series, another one. This is session 3. We will be covering Mega Goal 1, Mega Goal 3, and Mega Goal 5. And this session is about listening and reading, critical thinking, skills and strategies. Thank you for joining us again today for session 3. Not sure how many of you have joined us yesterday. From session 1 and 2, and welcome to the new ones who have just joined us for the first session. This is a secondary level session that we're running for our teachers. So this is session 3, and we will be covering the first semester course books, Mega Goal 1, Mega Goal 3, and Mega Goal 5. This session is specially designed for secondary level teachers. Just making sure we cover that so you know you're in the right session. It's for secondary level teachers, and we will learn more about in-class and online teaching for first semester course books, Mega Goal 1, Mega Goal 3, and Mega Goal 5. Now, before I proceed any further, quick sound check to see if you're connected, you can hear my voice. As usual, hand icon on the right side of your screen, just below your name. Please click on the hand icon if you can hear my voice. And if you can't, just drop in how you can connect to the audio, because once you are in WebEx, you will need to connect to the audio. Just giving you a minute to, okay, great. Lots of hands going up and comments coming in as well. Crystal clear, thank you, excellent. Moving on to the moderators, we have myself, Parish, Minerva, Nikos, Medini, Nasir. We're here in the background to help you out with any questions you have, or if you face any trouble during the webinar, feel free to let us know and we will be there to support you. Our wonderful trainer is Danai. Danai is a teacher, educator, a content developer, and also an author. And she successfully delivered several training workshops in Saudi Arabia for both teachers and supervisors, and interestingly also co-authored the Saudi editions. So I don't know, you must have known her by now, but if you're here for the session for the first time, yes, this is Danai's a brief introduction for you. Thank you, Danai, for your valuable time in joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks. So this is session 3 for secondary teachers, as I mentioned earlier. Just going to drop the link to the handout for today's session. Danai usually refers to a handout during the session. There are 2 handouts in this link. If you click on the link, you will be able to download both the handouts. So you can do this now. A lot of people ask, should we do this now? Yes, if you would like, you can click on the link, download the handout, and be ready whenever she's going to refer to it. We will keep dropping the link in the chat box for the handout in case you missed it or anything like that. Sorry, moving on to housekeeping. So like I said, once you're connected into the WebEx, into the webinar, you will have to ensure your audio is connected as well. So you will have to connect to the audio. And I have mentioned how you can do that. To hear the audio, you will have to connect using your phone icon or laptop icon. So just make sure that's done. If you're facing any connectivity issue with the audio, then we recommend you use the call-in function with your phone. Although I think we checked earlier, most of you can hear my voice, so it should be okay. We also recommend you to install any high networking apps such as Netflix, YouTube, or any gaming platform, because this might affect the bandwidth of your webinar. And then actually the most famous one is the certificate. So you will receive the certificate via email for every session that you attended. So if there are 5 sessions and you attended 3 sessions, you will get the certificate for those 3 sessions. You will receive this on email, but once the webinar series is completed, so we're sending this later. We're also sending, for example, the intermediate, the elementary, the secondary, they're all going to be sent together. So we will send that out to you. So please be patient, because we have to make sure who's attended and who's not. So watch out for that email that you can download. We will cover Q&A towards the end of the session. But if you need to leave, that's absolutely all right. You can leave after an hour once the session is completed. If you want to stay back for Q&A, that's also all right. You're more than welcome to stay back for Q&A. And we cover that after an hour. So we will probably cover that around 11:05. And then, of course, you've got the chat box and the Q&A on the right side, which you guys are almost very familiar with by now because of all the comments and lovely questions that you post in there. You can post your questions on the right side of the corner in the Q&A box. We encourage you to ask any questions and we try to cover this. This is going to be questions based on the platform or any other general questions that you have. It's a Q&A box. And the chat box, which is located right above the Q&A box, is more so like any comments you have, you can write it there, or if you want to engage with the presenter, then I usually read from the chat box. So if there is an interactive session and she's asking you questions, she's going to read from the chat box. So make sure you use the chat box for the engagement and the Q&A box for any question and answers. But it's all right, our moderators are here to help you out in any case. And the last thing for me today is a couple of FAQs that come in. So you must have noticed you're muted in this session. You won't be able to unmute yourself, but also you are marked present automatically by the system. So you don't have to mark yourself present anywhere. We can see you, we can see your names. There are 716 people right now in this webinar. However, you can only see your name on the right side. You won't be able to see the other people who have joined in this webinar. And that is because of privacy and GDPR purpose. So if you think you're the only one, you are not. Don't worry about that. You are not in a hidden list, or you're not the only one who has joined. Similarly, the chat box works the same way. So if the chat box is enabled for all the participants who are in the webinar right now, but you cannot see the comments that are coming in from your colleagues or other teachers, and that is because of, again, privacy issues, GDPR, but then I usually read the comments as they come in, so you are able to follow along and you know what's happening. We understand you can't read them, so we usually read them out for you so you know what's happening, if that is all right. And you must have noticed that every link is different. So we are doing a 10 a.m. session today. We have a 1 p.m. session today as well, but the 10 a.m. link is not going to work for the 1 p.m. link. And that is because it's a different date, it's a different time. So just make sure you attend, you click on the right link. And the tip for this is you just check the date and the time. So it's November 18th today, and it's 10 a.m. So you click the link that says the correct date and the time. If you're using the 10 a.m. link to log for 1 p.m., again, I repeat, that's not going to work. You just need to make sure you're using the right link for the session. You receive a confirmation email once you register for the session, by the way. So once you register, you get a confirmation email. And if the session is full, looks like we are going at full capacity for future events, then you get an email that apologies, the session has already reached maximum capacity. And that is like 1,000 people in a webinar. That's what we can accommodate. So if 1,000 people have registered, you will not be able to register then. So sorry about that. But look, if you already have the confirmation email, just use the link in the email to log in the webinar. Just make sure it's the right date and time. And if you have missed your confirmation email or lost it somewhere in the inbox because you registered for all 5 of them together, you receive a reminder email every morning of the webinar. So you receive it 2 hours prior to the webinar. It's the same link. You can use either of those. Unless there are any questions for me, I can pass on to Danai. Can I share the handout for yesterday? Of course I can do that for you. No worries. Give me a minute there. So this is the handout for session 1, 2, and 3. In case you have missed the handout for yesterday, here it is in the chat box for you. You didn't receive the certificate for yesterday's session. Well, we didn't send it out yet. Remember, I said you will get this next week. Because we're trying to sort, a lot of people have joined using their colleagues' link. So the certificate is going to have your colleague's name. So we are trying to sort that out from our end. So please be patient with us. Just checking if you have anything for me. If not, I will pass on to Danai. Yes. It says, so there's a question, sorry, Danai, I'm interrupting. Are there any special, any special level for teachers? Yes, this is a secondary level webinar for teachers. That is what we're covering. So just make sure in the right webinar. This is session 3. We have 5 sessions. We have covered 2 sessions yesterday. We're covering session 3 right now. We cover session 4 in the afternoon, and we only have 1 session tomorrow. So if you're going to ask us for a link for the 1 p.m. session, we don't have a 1 p.m. session. We only have 5 sessions for the secondary level, for all levels actually, for teachers. And I guess that's it. I'm sorry, you cannot change the name on the certificate. It's going to appear as you registered. So yes, you can use the link in the reminder to get into the webinar. It's absolutely okay. You can use the confirmation link or the reminder link. All right, I guess that's it. Sorry for boring you. Over to you, Danai. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Suresh. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I don't know how many of you were here yesterday, but basically we'll carry on with receptive skills. Yes? Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's good. It's good to see people are back. Okay. We're going to talk about listening and reading with a view to developing listening and reading skills in our learners. Okay. So if you're thinking of a test, that comes at the end, but if you do develop the skill, they will be able to do it. Okay. Can we discuss spoken language a little bit? I'm very happy to be back with you. Thank you so much for all the lovely comments. Okay. Do we always form complete grammatical sentences when we speak? What do you think? No. No. Okay, we don't, when we speak, I've just started and restarted. I said, when we speak, and then I stop and I said, we don't, okay, fine. So we use utterances, okay? And they might not be grammatical sentences. Do we have unlimited time to plan what we're going to say and rehearse it in a normal interaction if we're speaking to somebody face to face or on the phone? No, we haven't got the time. So we're going back to that again, it's restricted. Do we only want to speak when we want to request or exchange information? You feel free in expression, yes. It is spontaneous, yes. No, not only when we want to request or exchange information, but also when we want to do what? Ideas? Express feelings, yes, okay. Communicate, that's right, okay. Communicate for social reasons, okay. So we're talking about transactional and interactional exchanges. So we speak for the sake of speaking and interacting with other people, but sometimes there's no information, so to speak, being exchanged. Yes, good. I'm getting all kinds of comments about don't think about grammar, interact, and so on. Absolutely don't. I agree. Grammar is not that important. In this particular case, exchange of information is important, provided you can get your message across if you're speaking or understand the message if you're listening. Just to ask you to reflect on a couple of things again that we've already discussed. Do we address every person that we speak to in the same way? No. Okay. What's the word that begins with C? Something of communication. Communication takes place in a, hello? No? C-O? Context. Thank you. Yes. A lot depends on the context of the exchange. Okay? Specifically about the people who are speaking to one another, or the addressor addressee, where, okay, why they're exchanging and why they're communicating, what for, what the relationship is, and so on. They're all relevant. So if you say to your students, for example, you're going to listen to a chat between friends, and you stop there, is that enough? Are you giving your students enough context to be able to understand what they're going to listen to? No, exactly. You need to build it up more, or elicit from them, or have it in visual form and elicit from your students. You established that grammar mistakes are not important in spoken communication, provided the message goes through, provided we manage to convey what we want to convey. It might not be information, but we want to be polite, for example. We want to show somebody that we're open to kind of discussion, that we're being friendly, and so on and so forth. That's still it still conveys the same thing. How important are words, in fact, chunks in spoken communication? Yes, in most cases, they are important, okay? Chunks, not sentences necessarily, but chunks. So if you say to somebody, for example, is that it? Did you get what I was saying? Did you get what I was saying? What I was saying? Okay. We're going to look at some more examples as we carry on. Misunderstanding, yes, the misunderstanding can be caused. All right. So, can you please have a look at this? Can you choose the items that you associate with spoken language? And when we talk about spoken language, we're not only talking about what speaking in the course books, we're talking about spoken language, spoken communication, spoken discourse in general in real life. Okay, utterances, yes. Phonology, yes. False starts, yes. Pauses, yes. Short stops, pronunciation, word chunks, redundancy, yes. Okay. Right. Repetition, yes. Okay. Intonation, yes, that's part of phonology. Repetition again. Good. So you didn't include planned content, and rightly so. Unless, of course, you're going to be talking to teachers, as I'm talking to you, in which case I have to plan what I'm going to talk about, okay? But again, if you want your presentation or if you want your discussion to be interactive, not a one-way lecture, again, you will need to be a lot more flexible. You will need to stop, start, repeat, and so on. Okay. Great. All right. Now, think about written language. Planned content. Yes, absolutely. Unless, of course, you're chatting. Do we have stops and pauses in written language? You mean lexical cohesion? Yes. Punctuation? Yes, of course. Repetition, do we repeat things in exactly the same words? Okay, if you've got literature, you've got effects, you've got poetry, you might. But if, for example, you're writing an email or you're writing a report, or no, you don't repeat things. Okay. Yes, cohesion. Okay. Lexical cohesion, organization, punctuation. That's right. What's the connection between phonology and punctuation? Information structure, yes, but what's the connection between phonology and punctuation? You know, there is a connection, at least in some schools of thought, stops, pauses. In other words, as we speak, okay, as we deliver something through spoken language and we pause, that would probably relate to a comma. If we complete what we want to say, okay, raising and falling of the sound and pitch. Yes, we're talking about phonological features again. Okay, but are phonological features, all phonological features documented through punctuation? Not really, yeah? But this is what is serviced by punctuation really when we write. Unfortunately, the whole thing has become very formalized, and we sort of almost memorize rules about where to put commas and where to put this and where to put that. But in actual fact, if you look at a text and you think, okay, I want this text to be read by some of my colleagues, and I'll pretend that I'm reading it to some of my colleagues, and you read it and pause where you would want people to pause. It's a good way of checking punctuation. Yes. Okay. Absolutely. I'm really putting some things through in a very simple form. Some of you might think simplistic. Yes, I am talking. I do have in the back of my mind tonic groups and things like that, but I don't want to get into any heavy terminology. There's no point, and it's not going to help anybody. Okay. Now, these are some of the things that you've said yourselves. It's important to listen and read the text first. That's about reading. Yes, it's okay to deal with punctuation when you speak to them. Can we have a look at this? This is what some of you said. It's important to listen and read the text first in your material, in your book. The pre-task is important. Absolutely. The first stage is important. But is it important to listen and read the text first? No, it's not important. You're not expected to develop a phonology, to develop pronunciation, or to develop speaking through a reading text. That's written language. What you're interested in is developing your learner's ability to read and understand. Or read, understand, for example, note take and then write a summary. Read, understand, and answer questions. No, you don't want them to listen and repeat first. We're talking about reading specifically, yes? May I repeat that? Today we're discussing listening and reading. We're discussing receptive skills. Students need to read aloud so we can check pronunciation. We're talking about listening and reading comprehension, okay? So you don't have to read aloud to your learners, nor to ask them to read aloud themselves. This isn't what we do when we read in order to understand. Do we need to deal with all vocabulary in the text first? No, thank you. All right. I don't want my students to read the questions before reading the text. Do you agree or disagree? Disagree. Good. I'm glad some of you disagree. Yes, a lot of you disagree. Good. Good. No, right. Okay, fine. You want your students to read the questions before reading the text, so that they read the text in order to answer the questions. We're talking about, again, reading skills development. We usually read for a purpose, okay? So if, for example, you're reading the news, okay, the newspaper, you're reading it on the site, okay, online. Do you read every single word very carefully and make notes? No. If you're preparing your lesson for your class and you look through the part of the unit that you're going to be working on, or you look through the whole unit, do you read it exactly the same way you would read a news article? No, you read it differently. So in order to simulate, to put them in a position, put the learners in a position where they will sort of experience, in a sense, as much as possible what we do in real life and develop their understanding, we need to set tasks first. We need to set a purpose for the reading. So this is why we set the questions first. We ask them to read the questions and then read the text, or look at the task, read the task, and then read the text. Something else that some of you say, I need to read the text slowly and underline all the words that are new. No need. Okay. Good. I'm glad we agree. Right. Okay. No, you don't need to do that. If you ask your students to just read a text without giving them a purpose, they will start reading the text very slowly and underlining every single word that they think they're not sure about, that they don't think it's new, that they don't think this, that, and the other. We are talking about reading, okay, not reading for language at this point. We're talking about reading for comprehension, for understanding. Do we use reading and listening to present and practice language? Yes, but that's a different purpose, okay? So yes, we can use it to introduce language, to introduce and practice language, but what we are talking about here is developing the skills that will help learners understand what they read. Okay, so comprehension first. Okay, yes, you can flip whenever you think it's appropriate. Okay, right, so reading for specific information. Yes, you might be reading for specific information, reading for details, okay? Reading and in order to fill in sort of a form, reading to fill in a chart, to note take, okay? In other words, what you do in developing your learners' reading skills in terms of comprehension is you're trying to get them to do in English what they might do in their own language as well. Okay, how do they understand if they don't know words, if they don't know Correct pronunciation. Okay, why would you correct pronunciation through reading? Why not do that when you're doing listening for language or when you're doing speaking? You can't do everything through every single text that you come across in your book. Please remember that. It's as if you think of every possible thing that you can do with every few lines that you see in your textbook. No, that's not the way it works. No, you can't correct pronunciation through reading lessons. There are all sorts of things you can do, but please, what I would like to stress here is reading aloud is not reading for understanding. It does help some people. Maybe you'll argue that if you have auditory learners, then they prefer to also listen to themselves. But if you get them to think about it, they do realize that it doesn't necessarily help them understand what they're reading. So reading aloud is something else that we use in very early, in initial literacy stages, to make sure that students, younger students, associate sound and letter. So it's initial stages, very early stages. Reading aloud, however, reading aloud, for example, on television, reading aloud on the radio, a reader reading a story, is an art. People get trained to do that, okay? Actors get trained to do that. If you want to train them to read something aloud in a meaningful way, that's a different matter altogether. But this is not what we're talking about here. Okay, you have come across these, haven't you? Bottom-up processing, top-down processing. Can we deal with words in a minute, please? Okay. What helps us understand? What helps us understand things? Okay. Let me do something more practical. All right. Background knowledge, yes, of course. In understanding, we understand things not only through language, our knowledge of language, but through all our knowledge sources. Okay? So, before reading or listening, what is important is to activate what your learners know. Remember, we're talking about young adults. We're talking about people who know things. We're talking even children. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. They're still people. They know things. They know things about life. They know things about subjects. Yes, you ask them to predict, but you don't want them to predict correctly. You don't want them to miraculously guess what is in the text. Yes, describe what you can see. You might want to use visuals like these. Okay, I've used these from a lesson in one of your books. Okay, it's not simply to give an idea about the text. Yes, of course. What they know about the topic, absolutely. It's to activate what they know about the topic, because it's very important to have that while you're listening. Okay? So it's important to prepare them to do that. You can also ask them if you want to brainstorm on words and phrases that they think might be used in what they're going to listen to if you have introduced the topic through Yes, discuss it, but give them time to think. Think. Brainstorming involves thinking. Give them time to think. If you just look at these questions, if you just look at, show this picture online or in the class, and ask the students, so just use your imagination, where are you? And you're addressing the whole class. How many people will answer? I can only see one answer. Or everybody, many, see, 10%. Okay, some. You'll have a lot of people who won't answer because they need time to look at it, okay? And that's something about images, about pictures as well. Yes, what comes to mind when you see this picture? Okay. We notice different things, each one of us, individuals. It's a matter of perception, okay? So you need to give them time. So what I would suggest is that instead of telling them the questions like that, first of all, write them, as I've done here. Write them so that they're on the screen if you're teaching online, okay? Write them on the board if you're in class, or project them, whatever you want to do. Okay, get students to work in pairs or groups. Tell them to think about these questions. Okay, look at the picture and think about this question. Same questions. Picture. Picture. Yeah? Okay, so do they need to recognize the picture? One of you said, no, it's not a test. We don't care if they identify the picture exactly as it is in the book, in the text. What we want them to do is, yes, to prepare them mentally, let them think about possibilities, activate thoughts, associations in their minds. Yes, a lot depends on how you access a topic, how you go into, yes, there is no right or wrong. Thank you very much. So it's not a matter of trying to predict what's in the text. It's not really trying to get it right. It's no right or wrong. You are activating their minds. Yes, they're thinking. But you are also giving them the chance to recycle what they know, to recall language that they've learned. And naturally, again, one of the things you can do after the pictures is, and now brainstorm on words and expressions that you think you might come across. It doesn't matter if they're used or not used. Well, when you ask them to try and brainstorm on words that might be used, yes, activate creative thinking. Yes, absolutely. Creative and critical. So you see, when we talk about critical thinking, we don't talk about one or two or whatever, three types of activities that say creative thinking. It's something that should run through a lot of the things that you do. But one of the things that all learners need, and particularly these learners in secondary, is think, even if it's just a minute, if it's half a minute, if it's 2 minutes, okay? They need to think before they can form some sort of idea, recall things, make associations. So that's important. So when you're setting up activities, okay, have the instructions very clear. Look at the picture or pictures, if you show them many pictures at once. Imagine you're looking out the window, it says here. It doesn't have to say this. Look at the picture. Where are you? Where do you think you are? What kind of place are you in? Okay, what do you think is happening? Or different ones, depending on what your text is and what you're looking at. Okay, take time to collect her words. I mean, the learner. Yes, and thoughts. Now, again, let's always remember that language is there to convey meaning, to convey a message, to convey an idea, to convey a fact. If there's nothing to convey, why should you use language? Okay, and here, where do you think this is? What kind of place is it? Do you know? Have you seen this? Any ideas? You don't have to go to hotels. Yeah, hotel capsules, yes. Bedroom, hotel. Okay, pods, yes. Okay, fine. In Japan, okay, so you know more about them. In a submarine, it could be, yes, fine. So small rooms, yes, saves a lot of sleeping capsules. Spaceship, yes, why not? Yeah, okay, fine. It doesn't matter what the text says, where it says it is, and so on. The different answers that you've given are perfectly appropriate. Okay, on the moon, yes, why not? The space station, maybe. Okay, in an airport, anywhere where you would want to save space. In other words, yes, fine, okay. Very good. Okay, so, and what about this then? What kind of place is this, do you think? Igloos. They do look like igloos. So, cold, somewhere where it's really cold. The Arctic, yes? Hotel, again, you've seen the unit. Okay, so, cave. I don't know. Yes, maybe. Snow house, yeah. Netherlands, maybe. But it's which part of the globe? Winter spa. Yeah, why not? Sweden, beautiful hotel. My house of the future, yes. Lapland, maybe. North Pole, okay. But somewhere where it's really cold, yes. Okay. Very good. And here? Oh, come on, you're cheating. The ones who know the unit are coming up with specific answers. Amazon, the forest, okay. A farm, yes, it could be a farm. A hotel in Brazil, yes, you've read the unit. Tropical forest. Tree hotel, yeah. It could be in Asia, yes. Of course it could be in Asia. Woodhouse, capsule. Does it look like a capsule? A tree house. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Okay. And so on and so forth. It doesn't matter what. It's like you're interpreting the picture and you're coming up with ideas. And as you come up with ideas, you come up with language. Okay. If you want to get them to justify the answers as well, get them to say why they think that. Okay. Discuss in groups, and then ask them to read, okay, and compare with their ideas. So you can do this in part. This is from listening and listen and discuss. It's the beginning of the unit, okay? Why am I using it as a reading? Why am I using this as a reading text? Because it is a reading text, because it's a text. And even if we want to then practice through spoken language, to begin with, we want to focus on the content, okay, on the meaning, and then focus on the language that we want to present and practice. So what you could do is do it in sections, yes? All right, so you came up with a number of ideas. Can you have a look and compare your ideas to the information that you find here? So that would be your first reading task. Exactly. The reason you have 45 minutes, this is why I'm suggesting it. If you do this in class with the pictures, or you don't have to use all the pictures, you can use one, maybe this one, and this one only. How long will it take to get them to think and activate any knowledge they have about the world? Less than 5 minutes, actually. Less than 5 minutes. Okay? I would say around 3 minutes. Every minute counts. Okay. If you, however, go through every single text, 10 seconds, they might want to spend a bit more time, but it doesn't take long. Okay, should they see the text while listening? Well, if you want to, in your teacher's book, we do say that you can do that if you want. But I would go for a silent reading to begin with, and then do listen and follow in the text, quite honestly. But up to you. Look at the teacher's guide. Please look at your teacher's guide. I can't repeat that enough. Everything is there, every single step. Okay? Yes, you can start with listening if you want. Okay. If you want to work on vocabulary, what we tend to do is let people, yes, use dictionaries as you suggested, some of you suggested yourself, work on words afterwards. And if you look at your quick check here, you can see that there is a task with key vocabulary and there is comprehension. So what I would suggest is, yes, the teacher's edition is useful, I agree with you. What I would suggest is you always look at this. Maybe you will want to give them these questions and ask them to read and find the answers. Yeah? So again, give them the task first. Yes, you start with pictures and overall view of the pages. Yes, that's always good. You take them on a tour of the unit. That's very nice. Okay? And pair work. Okay? They have to design an unusual hotel and so on. So they start being creative themselves and come up. Yes, it is useful, but can you manage without it? I would say that if you're tempted to work traditionally, in other words, to teach your students about the language and start translating, going through every word and wanting to do everything through the text, please use the teacher's guide because it will help you balance things. Okay? Now, the same, it doesn't take a long time. It takes a lot longer to read the text, translate the text. Is it possible? Why would you want to ask the students to translate the text? If you haven't got the teacher's guide, it's online, but you need to register to understand. So they translate to understand. No. This is exactly why we have tasks. We have questions. Please look at the teacher's guide. We set a task so that we train learners to read for a reason, for a purpose, so that they don't start reading the whole text word by word, underlining every single word they think they don't know or they think they're not sure about. That takes a long time. And then what do? You translate the text. You ask students to translate the text. That takes a long time. There is no way you can get on with development if you do that. And once again, grammar translation, was used centuries ago to study the language. It was an academic pursuit. Yeah, it wasn't to train people to read and understand. No, translating new words is not compulsory for the teacher. It's not a good idea, particularly at this level, to translate words. Train your learners to use dictionaries. You have tasks that you can use to help your learners develop the ability to make educated guesses. Okay? This is a time when this language is a global medium. Okay? You don't have to connect it with any country. It's a global medium. This is what people use to communicate across the world. All kinds of nationalities, all kinds of reasons, all kinds of ages. So, if you train your learners to develop these skills, they will be able to survive. They will be able to use this global medium, and this is what we're interested in. Yes, thank you. English to English dictionary, please. Not bilingual dictionary. Not bilingual dictionary. What are you going to do with bilingual dictionary? Those of you who attended yesterday's session, do you remember that little thing that we did with the word work? Each word has so many uses and so many different meanings. So which one exactly are you translating and why? Because it's in a particular context? Fine, so why don't you use the context to explain? English to English. Your learners, and in secondary, quite honestly, they're about to get out of school, yeah? They're looking out towards the future. If you don't train them to use the language in a realistic way, what are they going to do? Yes, lifelong learners. And basically people who can use this language to communicate if they're going to be involved in business or studies or anything at all. And what will they do if they have to communicate with other people, online or face-to-face, if there's no epidemic? How are they going to do it? Will they have a translator, an interpreter with them? And please don't mention translation apps because you know they're bad. Okay? Yes, they're going to chat to communicate with others. Yes, they need efficient methods to help them learn alone with no help. Absolutely, I agree. They need to become a little more, and they can. They can. In one of the earlier sessions, you agreed that many, and some of you, in fact, said that you feel it's challenging, it's difficult to get them interested and to maintain interest with these groups, okay? Well, this is why it's difficult to maintain interest. If you want to give them everything, you don't give them something to work through themselves. Make them think, okay? Help them learn rather than lecture them. Yes, it's your job to do that, okay? So you're also trying to help them learn how to learn. Okay. In listening, we're basically dealing with the same thing, okay? We're dealing with listening to understand. Very difficult. No, it's not okay to use a bilingual dictionary. Why would you use a bilingual dictionary unless you were in a bilingual situation? And for example, think about the States where you have large communities, Spanish-speaking communities. Most of the students get bored when you speak English. Well, they get bored because they're not interested in the topic, maybe, or they get bored because they're not involved. So get them involved. get them to do things, in other words, not to be inactive. Okay? They do understand if you allow them to think and try to understand. I know that I'm talking about a huge area in methodology, and 1 hour is not going to be enough. But all I can say now is, please use your teacher's book. Look, it will give you step-by-step instructions. Yes, you want to have active minds, okay? And if you look through, people talk about strategies, okay? Sometimes when I say skills, I mean what you could call strategies. Yes, they have to do the work. You assign tasks to involve them. So, for example, active reading. What is active reading? Every reading is active. Every reading is interactive. It's not passive. Okay? Yes, handing over responsibility is going to help, because if you hand over responsibility, you flip roles and you get them involved. Help them, train them to use dictionaries. We can't expect them to use dictionaries automatically without any help at all. If you just do 2 or 3 words per lesson through a dictionary definition, get the dictionary definitions and put them on your screen, and ask them to choose the ones that are appropriate for the particular thing that you're working on. Okay? To help them use dictionaries. Once you familiarize them with dictionaries, that English to English dictionaries, monolingual dictionaries, they're not going to be afraid to use them. And why use monolingual dictionaries? Because there will be examples, there will be different meanings, okay, and there will be examples, so they'll notice how the word is used. One single word, if you remember what we're talking about yesterday, really doesn't go very far, does it? Okay. One of the things that show the students how to use online dictionary. Yes, absolutely. Okay. One of the things that usually come up, and interestingly enough, you haven't mentioned it so far, is the fact that most students, and this is universal, will complain that when you play the audio and they look at recorded, they have to listen to recorded speech. What do they complain about? What do they say? Fast. It's fast. Do you know why they say that? Well, no, they don't speak too fast. It's natural speech, okay? They can't see the text. Thank you, because they can't see the text, they can't see the word. If you do everything through reading and reading aloud and repetition and translation and so on, they become reliant on what they see on the page, on words. On the page, in written language, we can see words, separate words. Please allow me to finish this. They can see separate words, but when they listen to connected speech. And in connected speech, we do not stop at every word. Is that how we speak? This is why you need to set a question. Okay, let's do something together. Okay, can you please listen to what I'm going to say and listen for what the brain does while you listen, after you have thought about the topic, okay? So, according to the purpose, for which we're listening. The brain selects the relevant sounds and then checks the information against what is anticipated and expected in terms of what the reader has thought about or anticipated before actually reading or before listening, if it's listening. A process of confirmation, rejection, modification of information follows. Can you answer the question that I asked? Again, fine. Okay. First of all, I didn't write the question, so it might be a good idea if you write it for yourselves. All right. Because if I use I can't use the whiteboard at the moment. Okay. So what I asked is, the question is, what does the brain do while we listen? What does the brain do while we listen? So I don't want you to repeat the whole thing that I'm going to say. I just want you to answer that question. You can answer it with 2 or 3 words. Okay? So, according to the purpose for which we are listening, in other words, whether we're listening to the news or because we're interested to find out what's happened with a particular event or what's happening in general around the world, the brain selects the relevant sounds and then checks the information against what is anticipated or what is expected. Because if you want to listen to the news, for example, and because you're interested in a particular event, obviously you know something about the event. So that while you listen, the brain selects relevant sounds, it could be whole words, and then checks the information against what is anticipated or expected. Select words and check information. Very good. Yes. Yes. Okay. So, very good. How did you know that was the answer? Because you could understand it. Yes, but what did you hear? The sounds of the words with the background. Absolutely. Associate words to find the meaning. Okay. Can you please listen to how I'm going to say it? The brain selects the relevant sounds and then checks the information against what's anticipated. I repeat, and can you tell me which words you remember, which words you heard? The brain selects the relevant sounds and then checks the information against what's anticipated. Can you tell me the words that you hear more clearly? Please listen and tell me which words. The brain selects the relevant sounds and then checks the information against what's anticipated. Definitely select. Okay, sounds, relevant, check. Okay, all right. Yes, you're absolutely right. So the words that will give you the answer are select, possibly relevant sounds, or not. Select, checks, and checks. Yeah? Select and checks. Why did those words come through more clearly and give you the answer? Because they're stressed. Yes. It's stress. It's word stress. Yeah. Not always, but usually when somebody is talking and providing information and so on, or just talking to convey some meaning, if you hear carefully, the words that are stressed, not the intonation so much, but the words that are stressed are the information carriers, are the words that will give you the information. and you put the rest together. So you don't have to hear every word. We don't hear every word. It's impossible to do that. Okay. This is in reading again. I'm switching between listening and reading, but please do remember that they are both dependent. Understanding is dependent on knowledge, background knowledge, and language, not just language. Okay? Yes, it's an interesting topic. The complete title is The Formula Behind Detective Stories on TV, or it doesn't have to be on TV. How would you approach this topic? Would you use the whole title or parts of it? Parts of it. Okay. Yeah, I think this is the strong part, yeah? Detective stories. Okay. You could use the whole. I would personally go for detective stories, okay? With video, yes, of course, okay. Or you could just, if you haven't got a video, you haven't got anything, just give them the key item, which is detective stories, okay? And try to activate what they know. Would you expect learners to be interested in this? In detective stories? Yes, on the whole, I think. How can you make sure that they are engaged and thinking? Would you ask them to mention detective stories that they'd watched on video, streaming? Yes, 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 okay. Would you combine top-down and bottom-up processing? I'm going back because I don't want to leave that out. Sorry. Okay. Now, please give me a minute. Bottom-up processing, top-down processing. Bottom-up processing has to do from language to meaning. Top-down is from meaning to language. So what we've been talking about mostly is top-down processing, okay? It's sometimes not easy to distinguish between the two. It's often not easy to distinguish between the two. Yes, you can use anime, you can use whatever you like, whatever your students like rather, not you particularly. Okay, so in yes, schemata. So what type of prior knowledge might be needed for different types of discourse? Okay, different types of knowledge. I heard the news, cognitive levels. Yes, it is cognitive processing. It's a brilliant restaurant. You should try it. Okay, it's got to do with schemas. What you do, what you associate a restaurant with, tables, chairs, or not, cushions, servers, and so on. Sorry, I'm rushing because our time is up. Okay, so top-down processing is beginning from the meaning, beginning from the topic, beginning with the learners and getting them to think about knowledge sources, what they know about the world, knowledge of different contexts, situations, of how spoken language is structured, the code, and so on and so forth. When listening or reading in a foreign language, the listener may make use of one or all the knowledge sources in order to understand the input. Okay? If something is unknown, for example, a word or a phrase, the listener may have sufficient knowledge of the world to make an educated guess at the meaning. Alternatively, the listener may not have knowledge of the subject or the theme, but may know enough words' meanings to make an educated guess of at the overall subject matter, which is a lot harder. In other words, if you base it all on language, and you want people to try and figure out the context and the situation and the subject, the theme, through the language, it's even more demanding. But basically, this is what people use, okay, to understand whether they're listening or reading. Okay, we haven't got the time, unfortunately, to discuss every single question here. I wish we did, but you do have some handouts. You have 2 handouts. Please do read them. They have tasks for you to help you think about things. Thank you for the lovely comments. I'm really grateful, really appreciate it. Just remember, bottom up, top down, top down. You use all the knowledge sources. Different people will probably use different knowledge sources. It's not always easy to distinguish. What we do, for example, let me say one thing before I wrap up. When we use a text, listening or reading, to introduce new language, a new structure, if you like, what we do is we first go for this, we deal with the topic, we manage the meaning, okay, we focus on the meaning, and then we listen and identify specific language and move on with practicing and so on. That's when we want to teach language. But mostly what we've been talking about, listening and reading for understanding. I realize that some people have to go, have to run. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for participating, for all the comments. Now, you have those 2 handouts. So can you please have a look through the handouts? The best way to work through them is if some of you can get together and work through them. So basically collaborative learning, collaborative teaching, okay, beyond the classroom. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the session. Thank you so much for all your lovely comments, okay? And remember, if you want people to learn how to do things and you want them to be critical, justify their ideas. Ask them to justify their ideas. I think this is somewhere under the sea, or in a cold place. Why? Okay? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tanai. Thank you for the time and being patient with us and walking us through everything so in depth. Thank you so much. There's little time, but you cover a lot in that time, by the way. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will now move on to Q&A. Thank you for all the questions that you guys have dropped into us. If you want to leave right now at this point, please feel free to log off. That's fine. If you've got classes, we know a lot of you have, and other things to get to. We are now going to cover the Q&A. So if you've got questions, you can stay back. Before I move on, for the link at 1 p.m., the session at 1 p.m., that's going to be session 4. You will have to log in using the link that you have. This session is already at full capacity, so you will not be able to register for the session anymore, I'm afraid, because we already have 1,000 people who have registered, and I can only request that the 1,000 people who have registered just make sure they attended, because they are actually taking seats of people who would like to participate in session 4. Because I am getting questions about what about the second session. So yes, the second session is on. It is at 1 p.m. If you've registered, you already have the link, just join. And if you've not registered, I'm afraid we won't be able to take any more registrations. So if you are going to register now, you will receive an email that the event has reached full capacity. Okay, moving on to the Q&A. Thank you so much for sending these through. We'll cover a few of them. Just because we don't have time as usual, and we know you have to get back to classes, routines, prayers, and lunch. Number one is what is the difference between listen and discuss and reading.
In your coursebook, okay. What? Oops, sorry. Listen and discuss. If you haven't attended any other sessions, is the first part of the unit. Yeah, it's the presentation. So it presents the theme of the unit and the main language points of the unit. In other words, if not this, it's grammar, words, okay? So let me go back to another example. It's got it all. Okay? So this is the presentation. And if you use your teacher's guide, you have step-by-step instructions. These are your unit goals. Step-by-step instructions on what to do. But remember, that's the presentation part of your lesson. The grammar is here, but in a sense, what you're doing through the grammar is isolating the language items that are presented through this. Okay, identifying, practicing. For this as well, you've got step-by-step, detailed instructions and additional tips, additional information in the teacher's guide. Please use the teacher's guide. I know somebody said that, yeah, okay, fine, but we can manage without it. How can you be so sure? We all benefit from sort of exchanging ideas. You might decide you don't want to do everything exactly the way it is, but if you are tempted to translate, I would strongly recommend the teacher's guide to help you restrict that, to help you prevent that as much as possible so that there is more time for thinking, understanding, learning, speaking for your learners, and getting involved in the lessons for an active lesson that involves learners and optimizes the time that you have, which is always short. We know that's a universal problem. There isn't a single teacher in the world that doesn't complain about time. We all complain about time. Yes, it is restricted. That's a fact of life. We can't do much about it. So we are suggesting this particular way of working because it is more effective in relation with our goals. And what are our goals? Our goals are to help our learners learn how to understand and use written and spoken English. Does that answer the question?
I hope it does.
Yeah?
Okay, yes, the person has commented yes. What about listening? ? Should we set the questions for them before listening to the audio?
Yes.
In brackets, as you said, to set the purpose of the reading text first.
Yes. Set those questions unless you have a different idea and you want to just set something, say one particular question or one thing for them to just listen once and get the gist of it and answer one more general question and then maybe look at the questions, the specific questions in the book and listen again and answer. So that will depend on how demanding the listening text is, the topic, and so on. How can you develop your students' reading skills? We have been trying to talk about that, but it's a huge subject, so we haven't gone through every single thing. Again, do please look through your handouts and look through the introduction of the teacher's guide. I know it's long, but it's good to read. Bedtime reading. Okay, so try to work with your students in 3 stages, roughly speaking. In other words, before reading, to activate background knowledge, language associated with the topic or the situation, to activate schema or script that is related with certain events, so that when you say restaurant, if you really shut your eyes and you think of restaurant, you'll probably think of a specific restaurant. You can see yourself walking through the door, and then what happens? Does somebody welcome you, and you asked to sit in a particular place? Okay, so you can see it, you can visualize it, you know exactly what the schema, what moves you go through. Okay. While reading, set a name to provide focus, purpose for reading. This can include questions or the expectations, predictions made in the before reading stage, and students read in order to compare their ideas with those in the text and identify different or new elements. Okay. After reading, which is post-reading or after you read, whichever way you want to call it, the purpose of this stage is to provide opportunities for learners to reflect on the content or aspects of the text and discuss, express opinion, agree, disagree, comment, and so on. It can also include activities that help learners identify features of the text, of the written discourse, such as format, organization, punctuation, etc., with a view to raising their awareness and prepare them for production, for writing. Okay? Now, the last one, discussion, you will find in, bear with me. You will find, oops, you won't find. You will find discussion following speaking, following reading in goal 5. There's one sort of speaking stage at the end. That's because the idea is that they've got more language, they have developed skills, and there can be a discussion, reflecting on the topic and discussing. Again, please have a look at your teacher's guide and have a look at the handouts that I gave you. They're not difficult to read. I haven't included any references or anything like that. They're just addressed to teachers. They're quite practical. Okay.
And a follow-up about that same question is, how do I make my students listen more and more?
Listen more and more. Suggest that they listen, they watch videos, they listen to podcasts that they're interested in. Find out what they're interested in. And if you ask them, you'll probably find out that some of them do, or a lot of them do anyway. They are exposed to language. But I do find that watching films, video helps tremendously, because what you have there, the movies is not.
That's true.
I didn't get that.
Oh, I think the connection. No, I was just saying that is true. It's more about watching the videos or any podcast or any movie.
Yeah, watching videos is a very good way of developing this, because what you have on the video is the actual context. You have the people who are interacting or what's happening, and when there aren't people, you're given more information about the context and things that have preceded and things that have followed. You can do wonderful work with video if you want. It's a very good way of developing listening and understanding.
Thanks. And this one says, how can we do the pair work or group activities in an online class? It is very challenging.
It is challenging. Yes, it can be challenging, but it's more than challenging. It's new. It requires change, and that can be quite nerve-wracking and frightening in the beginning for all of us. As long as you have the functions online, it's a wonderful way of working. In other words, if you have channels, if you had chat rooms that you can send students to in pairs or groups to work together, usually when you have those functions, you also have the function of listening in, when you can discreetly kind of tune in and listen to what's happening. The minute they realize that you can listen in, they start doing the work that they need to do in English. Encourage them anyway to do it. Why is it sometimes why is it an advantage very often to have pair work and group work online? Well, because there's no noise. Because one group does not disturb another group. Because the complaint about group work and pair work in the classroom, if you remember, is that there's a lot of noise. And my answer to that is train your learners not to shout. They don't have to shout. They're close enough. They can speak quietly in their group so that they don't disturb the others. But in online, you haven't got that problem. So provided you have the functions to use, you can do it. And I know that the problem with a lot of teachers is control. You like their noise. Yes, it's nice to hear noise in a language classroom. You know things are happening. One of the problems with online pair group work that I know a lot of teachers kind of feel is a problem is control, that you can't control them. Yes, you can. But control is not everything, you know. If you give them something that they're really interested in, that they can really get their teeth into, you don't have to control anything, provided they know what they're doing, how to do it, and they're interested. So find out what they're interested in and what they do.
Okay. And this one says, and I guess we'll take this as the last one because we're already 30 minutes over. How do you divide lessons for periods? ? In lesson 4, we have conversation, listening, pronunciation, and vocabulary building. Do each one in separate period or all in one period? Also, these series of books don't really focus on listening skills.
Oh, yes, they do. Oh, yes, they do. Not only through the listening, but also through the conversation and all kinds of other parts, provided you use them in a particular way. There is nothing preventing you from setting up the context, setting the questions and getting students, for example, to listen to the conversation before you do anything else with particular language. There's listening. This whole approach is based on skills. So it's dealing with language through skills, through listening, speaking, reading, and writing. How you do things is, at the end of the day, very much up to you. But yes, you can follow the order in the book. However, there was an issue that had come up in another session about students looking up, if you want to use the tasks in your book, about students looking up the answers on the web because they can have access to the teacher's guide, apparently. If you want to deal with that, you can jumble the items in order, you can change them, or you can change the order, you can do whatever is necessary. Yes, you can show them the video and ask them to suggest what would suggest topics, themes that the lesson might be about. Yeah?
Okay, thank you. Just one last one, sorry. It is, what about asking students to make a study list for new vocabulary word and English meaning to help them understand the text?
Do that, yes. Look, usually what you might want to do is you look through something and you think, I want to make sure that they understand these 3 or 4 items because I think they're key for them to understand. So you try to elicit, you might want to deal with those words beforehand. You try to find out if they're familiar with them and so on. But then any further work you want to do with vocabulary, with lexical items, you can do after you have dealt with understanding. There are a lot of, thank you for that. And also use your workbooks. There are quite a lot of things in the workbook that you might choose to use while you work through the units. So there's nothing stopping you from doing that as well. Replacing maybe things with things in the workbook, like there's a lot of writing in the workbook. It's not a matter of should, okay? Look at the workbook, decide what is going to be useful for all. I don't know your students, you do. You should know what they can or cannot do, where they might need help. Decide what you think is useful for everybody, and keep the rest for learners that you think need more help with certain things. So assign sort of work, tasks, exercises to those learners to help them develop the areas that you think they need more help with.
Thank you, Danai. That makes a lot of sense. I guess this rounds up now for session 3 because we are definitely running over and a lot of people are just staying back for the Q&A. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. This was amazing and you're being a fantastic audience. We will see you again for another session at 1 p.m. The link is already in your inbox in case you have registered. So just make sure you log into the webinar and we will cover session 4 then. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for all your comments and your questions and for participating and for making this session interactive. Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. And thank you to you too, Danai.
Thanks, Erish, to you too.